Competency 7 evokes awareness. There has been a couple of updates that we want to take into consideration with this one. But first, let's do the overview of the competency itself. So, evokes awareness in coaching is all about facilitating the learning of the client through their own insights and knowledge. It's important that we allow the client to own this process. We can use tools like powerful questions, metaphors, analogies, silence, pause, checking in on language, noticing shifts in energy, and paying attention to emotion, getting curious about the emotion of the client and the beliefs that are guiding the client's actions and behaviors and thoughts and decisions. So it's all about communicating effectively. And what we mean by that is being present, being in a partnership with the client to help the client evoke awareness about themselves for themselves. The key question that we want to ask ourselves is, how do I help the client become aware of things that they are not currently aware of? Evoking awareness can often be confused with perhaps an acknowledgement. And the difference is truly in the fact that the evoking happens when there's something that is not in the client's sphere of awareness and that it is then brought into the client's sphere of awareness. Where an acknowledgement may be something that the client really needs to hear and helps them feel seen and heard and matter, but it's not necessarily something that the client doesn't already know. So if you're ever wondering, what is the opportunity in evoking awareness? It's to bring new things to light for the coachee. So let's talk about what's changed with this competency. Although it may seem like very minimal changes and really changes to the language, the outcome and impact of these changes are something we want to consider carefully. So the language has shifted from shares insights to shares knowledge. In other words, the coach has always been meant to share insights as they emerge for the client, by the client, in the way of reflection and mirroring and noticing. The language is now shares knowledge. This has brought a lot of confusion and a lot of actually controversy to the competency because a coach's role is truly not to advise, to tell, to assess, or to evaluate. And what we want to be sure of is that we are staying in our coaching lane. So for the language to become shares knowledge, it may be confusing for some coaches. Do I now share my expertise with the client? The answer is no. What you want to share is your energy, your observations, your noticing of the intricacies and the underlying things that are going on for the client, the emotion. You want to get curious about what the client is not saying and let the client connect the dots for themselves. The role of the coach remains witnessing. It remains a role of no attachment or no judgment. And so what we want to be sure of is that we're not creeping into consulting or advising because the word knowledge is there. We really have to stick to our role as coaches, which is to ask for permission if you're going to share an observation and always lean into the client's knowledge, lean into the client's experience, and remain in that all-important position of not knowing. This requires us to sit deeply in wondering while also using the shared partnership and energy that exists between you and the client and the symmetry that exists between you and the client to evoke new awareness, new insights, new knowledge for the client by the client. So the coach is really able to sit in an expansive space with the client while taking in their experience, their context, and their situation without making it about the coach and really taking ownership of the progress in the session. When a coach is doing this well, what we're going to notice is questions that feel really attuned to the conversation being had. The questions are flowing. There's an intuitive nature. There's a real reflection of what's emerging for the client in that moment. We feel a synergy between the client and the coach. We used to call it in the old competencies before the 2019 updates, dancing in the moment with your client. And I really love that. So I'd like to bring that back. The dancing in the moment is using pause, reflection, open-ended inquiry, and discovery to help facilitate the evoking of new awareness for the client. So we call this a generative conversation. It's co-created, it's partnered again, it's creating a shared space. And in that shared space, with the energy and the attunement of the coach on the client, there's an opportunity to evoke even more awareness for the coachee. Because we know that when people are really listened to, when they're heard, they become more brilliant in front of our eyes and in our presence. And so that co-regulation, the parasympathetic nervous system, all of the things that makes us human, when they come together, partnering in this equal partnership of equals that coaching provides, this is an opportunity for the coach to truly be in evoking awareness with skill and with intention and with mindfulness. New coaches, when they are working on this competency, evoking awareness, first of all, this competency exists throughout the entire conversation. We are evoking awareness from the moment that we say hello to our clients. So we first need to be mindful of that. And secondly, that when we're struggling with this, it sounds like the questions are memorized and dropped into the conversation, kind of like an interview, maybe even an interrogation at times, depending on how it sounds. And so we really want to stay out of that interrogation energy. And we also want to stay out of the interview energy because it sounds robotic and it's not flowing with what was just shared by the client. We really want to be in the experience with the client, but also be in their experience, trying to let go of your experience to be in the client's experience. And that means your questions flow and they're in response to what's being shared. So when it's not going well with evoking awareness, it will feel a bit robotic. And it will also sound like you may have an agenda that you're leading with. It could also sound like you are solutioning. You're pushing toward a certain solution for the client, or maybe fixing in that you want to save the client from something. Maybe it's bad feelings or risk or regret. And so we want to just be aware of how we are bringing ourselves to the session. The awareness for the client, remember, is not imposed by the coach. It's created for the coachee by the coachee. And that is the distinction that we want to sit with. Sum it all up, evoking awareness, competency 7 is all about moving from technical to intuitive. As we start to train as coaches in level 1 certification, for example, we're learning and unlearning a lot of past strategies that may have interfered with evoking awareness. So this learning opportunity is to go from technical learning competencies, learning skills of connection to intuition, which is to be really present and mindful with intention and fluidity with with the person you're partnering with. Silence is powerful here. We want to learn how to use silence as a tool in coaching. Pause, lingering. These are wonderful strategies that actually don't require much of you other than mindfulness and holding your tongue. So hold your tongue, twirl it 3 times, count to 4 if you want, and allow space to exist between you and the client. Because we know that when people stop talking, they don't stop thinking. They actually become more brilliant before your eyes. They get deeper into their thoughts and they get to go deeper into their knowledge and their wisdom. So allow that wisdom to surface with pause, silence, and wondering. In your wondering, you will allow the client to wonder about themselves. You will allow them to probe deeper into their thoughts. So remember to experience the client from their beliefs, not yours, and invite the client to meet themselves, possibly for the first time, through you, the coach, and the way that you witness your coachee.